Okay, a few things. Today, we're gonna go through and give you a last opportunity to get some feedback. I had work with you. For those of you who said that, I still have a chance to do that. I want to check in on the Good Time journals. And right now, up to this point, we have talked about the different components of your work and your life view. And then the next piece where I left you on Tuesday was to start to evaluate, compare, and contrast those things, right? So looking for that statement of coherency that was there, and then being able to tell a story about where those views came from, right? So those are pieces that are a little bit different than they talk about in the book, but they are going to be a big piece that starts on a big piece about in what we do and what I have to do going forward. So first thing I want to do, this was your charge for the last couple of days, to create that personal story summarizing your view and being able to give it for feedback. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes here to go through and to kind of organize your notes in literally about 2 minutes. And we're going to do feedback here, larger group, right? I've been asked not to move the desks. I'm not sure you guys have had more experience in classrooms than I have. This is my second time. I'm going to do it with you guys. But when they came in last time, even though everything was scattered all over the place when we walked in, there was kind of there was a request to kind of keep the desks where they are, and then I see now they've taped the floor, so I can't put you in the group. So we'll do larger group types of pieces, which will be just fine with that. So what I would like you to do over the next couple minutes, identify what kind of feedback you would like on your. Let's do the life view. Answer the following questions. These are fundamental questions for the life view. What gives your life meaning? What makes your life worthwhile and valuable? And then give a story that includes things like A, E, I, O, and U, and some of those detailed components that will help you demonstrate your experience and connect with people about your experience. And tell us where they came from. So I'll give you 2 minutes. Your presentation to all of us should be about 2 minutes in length. It's not going to be the entire life view. I actually want you to kind of synthesize and answer these questions concisely. Okay, so you can go ahead and work on that over the next 2 minutes. Alex and Sydney, if you could join us with your screen, that would be great. Okay. Another 10 or 15 seconds, you can wrap up. Okay, let me ask you a couple general questions. What's your life view? What goes into a life view? Not specifically for your life view, but in general, what's the life view? What's the purpose of it? What does it say? What does it tell us? Yeah, Ethan, I think.
Yeah. Like what you're working towards, like a specific goal, I guess.
Okay.
Like that's part of it.
What your direction is.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got, okay, good, let's build on that. What else? Yeah, Juan?
Personal growth.
Okay, areas of growth, good. What else? Part of your life view. What's one of the other words that I use kind of interchangeably with the life and work view? Talk about it all the time. Your. What else incorporates it? Over this side. Abby, Caroline, Addie, what goes into a life view? What's a life view all about? Okay, well, what were you considering when you were putting your life view together? I mean, you've been doing exercises on this. What's the life view incorporate? Oh, yes, your values, absolutely. What else? Good. What else?
I would say something that would make you happy and enjoy it.
Making it something that makes you happy and joy, absolutely, right? So what you value, right? What you aspire to, right? From Abby and Ethan and want what you're going towards, right? And that whole part, right? It's in the title of the book, Joy, right? Is one of the things that we look for in the compass. Yeah, Honey?
I was just like, I just like wanted to check this one book, like doing things tomorrow and finding a job.
Yeah, and so I appreciate the transition now to the job, and I'll ask some of our folks online as well. What then is your work view? Alex, Sydney, Aaron, what's your work view? What are some things that go into that? Or what are some things that you put into that when we were working on it earlier in the week?
Gaining skills that will be lifestyle or worth for life.
Alex, thank you for jumping in, but give me just 1 second here. Try that. All right, Alex, let's do a sound check.
All right. I said getting skills that will be worthwhile for life. Can you hear me?
I can hear you on my computer, but not on this one for some reason. Aaron, you want to give it a shot? Would you say something?
Sorry, my internet was just acting funny.
Aaron, give me a test 1, 2, 3.
Can you hear me now?
Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Nick, you picked a bad day not to come to class, man. Okay, just right in here. Tell me about your work view. How does your work view contrast with your life view? Yeah,
I kind of like all the same category.
yeah, you can define that to some extent, right? And so, you know, to take on the transition that you started, do your work view and your life view have to be distinct or separate? No, they don't. Can they be? Okay. Which would you rather have? Would you rather have a work view that's in line with your life view or one that is in conflict with your life view? Yeah, in line, right? That's the whole idea of coherency, right? We want there to be coherency in what you're pursuing with your work and what your goals are or what you aspire to or what makes you happy or joyful in your life. That's the whole point. And one of the points that they make in the book, and one of the things that I would love for you all to avoid, because you are still at, you know, at a point in time where you can work on and avoid it. You can avoid it, is to try to set something up, and to try to set up a situation where you have a work view that is coherent with your life view. Right? Work doesn't have to be miserable. It doesn't have to be a no pain, no gain deal. Right? And so what we have tried to do, or what I've tried to do, is to have you look into those things that make you feel joyful, that give you engagement, high energy, and flow. And when you can start to identify what those are, we're then going to go through a process of using those to identify your work and your life view. And putting together some possible ideas for how you can make those things coherent, right? That's the whole point of the exercise. So given that, who would like to start and talk about their life view? What's the lead us off? Okay, so let me ask this question alternatively. Given the work that we did in the first month of the course to put this together, why would you not want to lead off? Why wouldn't you want to lead off? Yeah, who?
The person who, well, the classmates, everybody, be nervous to start.
Yeah, I agree. Me too. I'm nervous for you. I can assure that. I can assure you of that. Okay, so what do we have to establish other than what we put together for creating this service-centered supportive environment for you to start to alleviate that nervousness? What do you do?
Keep in mind, there's no wrong answer when it comes to giving your opinion.
I can assure you there is no wrong answer about your work and your life. You are the ultimate experts on that. If we were, this was CNN and we were doing a segment on your work and your life view, your face would pop up in the box to talk about, right? You are the experts on your work and your life views. So I would agree with Carson, there would be no wrong answers on that, right? But if you had an answer that wasn't as fulfilling as you would like it to be, if you're having a hard time really putting your finger on that connection between your work and your life, coming up with the right words and the details and descriptions to make it reflect experiences that you've had, or to be able to connect with the other people that you're in, what would the class be able to do? What have we agreed that we're going to do? We're going to give you feedback on it, right? And you've been trained to be able to provide feedback in a non-threatening way without judgment that should decrease Carson's metric here, your level of nervousness. But you don't seem convinced at all. Yes, sir.
My problem is, I wouldn't mind sharing, I just don't wanna, like, I don't wanna be the first person. I don't wanna be the first person talking always, cause I do wanna hear what other people have to say.
Yeah,
Like, I don't wanna be always talking about my experiences.
yeah. I appreciate that. Because I'll let you in on a secret, Paul. We gotta know each other long. I don't want you to always be the first person talking. Let's spread the love. With that. What else? What could I provide for you to decrease the level of nervousness in sharing? This is a brainstorm. I mean, hey, I heard Professor Amani makes ice cream. That would be a good start. I'm less nervous with ice cream. Right, we can start there. What else?
I was just gonna say, like, giving us a sense of comfort, I mean, for the students and the teachers, so, you know, we're constantly listening to like what you have to say, and it's finally us kind of talking about our own, I guess, personal things, what we want to work on, your life,
Right.
working towards, you know, we need that comfort and, assurance from you that you're not going to, I guess, like, you know, shut our ideas down.
So let me ask you, Brian, I do appreciate that, because I wouldn't want a professor that I thought was going to shut my ideas down either. Right, we haven't been together very long. But you haven't been here very long, right? And Loyola, you know, you're well into your fifth month, right? And there hasn't really been a huge amount of conversation yet. Have I shut down any ideas yet? I appreciate you saying that. I don't think I have either. I mean, I try quite hard not to, being what I teach. Yeah,
I guess also is like something that comes with time. Because like, I think just for anyone, any of their classes, like, as the semester goes, you get more than
yes, because that's different than me asking you, has any professor shut your ideas down? Or have you been judged at any point in your career, high school? Probably, if you were shut down in middle school or elementary school, it was more impactful on you than if it would happen here. So yes, it does take some time. We're a third of the way through this course. It's all about interacting and sharing. So I want to try, and quite honestly, you're a group that interacts and shares. So I recognize all of those things. So this is my strategy. I recognize, starting the first hour that I taught in Loyola, and I think I told you that story about that first night, that the students would be more comfortable in small groups sharing their stuff with people that they already know, especially in the senior class, right? That's absolutely true. And so my courses are set up to do that. Except I can't even get Alex to be able to speak online. So doing small group breakout hybrid last time didn't work out really well. And to be honest, the interaction was okay, but it wasn't robust. So, and I think part of that is the technology and the fact that you have to sit 6 feet. I mean, there was a lot of logistical issues around that don't involve you at all. But we're at a point where somebody needs to lead and do it. And know have faith. You never know. The Jesuit place. Have faith that these classmates that have been good to you and have created a really strong environment over the last 5 months are going to continue to do that. And I guess you know that. I guess the next leap of faith is for you to believe that I'm not going to screw that up. I can assure you that if I was going to be judgmental and upset, it probably would have happened in the 4th hour last week. I get it. I mean, stuff happens. So please know that I appreciate the leap that it requires to jump out and be authentic and vulnerable and share your stuff. Trying to go through a process. There's a mutual understanding from everybody that we're going to do these things. There's another point that I want you to remember. When we put this together, I'm very clear about the fact that I got to say, because I'm in the classroom with you, right? This is uncomfortable for me too, right? I'm one of 15 people here. Right? I acknowledge that in a lot of cases, I'm at the top of the food chain, right? White guy, professor, the whole thing. But in terms of the environment in here, try to make it very clear. I view my role as one of 15 or 16. See, at this point, I talk a lot, especially in the beginning, because we're trying to convey these concepts. But also because you haven't started to talk yet. So I want to try to balance that out. Right? Otherwise, class will be really short, which is probably okay too. But we will get through the material. So I'll ask the question again, now that we've got a chance to talk a little bit. What do we have to do? What do we have to set up to get folks to jump in and to share? The other thing that I'll also add here, every single time, make sure I'm right about saying this. Every single time that I remember that we've been in this case, or I've called on somebody to answer a question, all right, or there's been silence, and I've called on somebody to jump out and to share. The point that it's been shared has been on point and has contributed to the conversation. Right? At no point have I ever been thinking, really, are you in the same class as Red? Like, I've never thought that. So you got a lot to offer. It's just going to be a lot richer experience for all of us, especially when the class is based on that. We do it. So given that, other than Lon, who can lead off for us? Alejandro, thank you, sir. Yeah, let me stop sharing here. Alejandro, please speak very loud.
So like my work, my life view.
Yes, please. Alex, can you hear our friend Alejandro? Okay, speak up.
Like, why are we here? What I said is like we all have like a certain purpose and something we're trying to fulfill in our life. So like it varies between people. And that's what I thought. And then like
What varies?
like what our purpose and what we're trying to fulfill, like what we're trying to become.
Okay, who's we?
Like people, like society, individuals, and society.
Okay. What's yours? What's your view?
My view.
Yeah. So I would agree with you that there's a lot of variability between the 15 people in this class. What's your piece of that? What do you contribute to that variability? What's your piece? What's your view?
Well, what I'm trying to fulfill is like I'm trying to be a contributing member to society, make a positive impact.
Okay, keep going.
And I wanna have like a job or a influence that'll like change people's lives for the better.
Okay,
Have a more like positive, like have people in society who have a more positive outlook on alcohol.
okay, keep going.
And I wanna like reach like fulfillment, like happiness and satisfaction. And I don't wanna regret choices I make and just be happy.
Okay, where do those views come from? Where'd you get them?
Well, a big part of it is like experiences that I've had with like my mom, like from a young age, she's taught me that I should like chase whatever I want. And, like try to become a person that I'm happy with, and that I'm like not afraid to like, share things with others, like my views and stuff.
Do you remember the last time your mom told you that?
It was before I came to college.
Tell us about it, where were you?
Where was I?
Yeah.
Well, I was like hanging out with my brother, and then she pulled me aside.
In the house?
Yeah,
Okay, your room, living room, kitchen, where were you?
I know.
Okay, she pulled you aside, what did she tell you?
She like hugged me and like kissed me and like cried a little. And she told me that she wants to see me become a man that I'm proud of. And who like my future kids will be happy to look up to. And that she believes that like I'm capable of doing those things. And that like my whole family, everyone's proud to know and love.
Did your mom love you?
Yes,
She proud of you?
yes.
I would agree with that, you know why? Because she told me that. Told all of us that. What'd you do right after your mom hugged you?
She loved me.
After she hugged you, after she told you that, what'd you do?
Exact same thing. And I told her that I wouldn't be where I am without her and all like, she's done for me.
Is there anybody in here or online? Alex, did you hear that? I hope you heard that, because that was an awesome story.
Most of it. It was coming out here.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. All right, awesome. I really want to hear you too, and I'm still working on that. Is there anybody in here right now that has any question of where Alejandro's life came from? You can tell us the room. You had an awesome story, Alejandro. You kept saying, I want to do things for other people. I want to make things better. I want to have a joyful life. You kept saying, so there was no question in my mind. You either have it written down there and you just kept saying the right thing, or you really believe it. Right? I think you really believe it. And now I know you do. Because you gave us a very vivid, tangible, emotion-rich description of where that came from. Right? Your views and your values are not aspirational. Right? They can be. Right? But you really can only have 3 or 4 values that you can work consistently to attain, and that you demonstrate. You can aspire to be a better person, you can aspire to be happier, but you've probably got some other really core values that you demonstrate all the time. Right? And so what Alejandro showed us in that description is a very consistent demonstration of what those values are, where they came from, and how that has shaped his view. Okay? What kind of feedback you have for Alejandro? Or other questions? Alejandro, what I would ask you to do, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was saying, I thought, had a very clear view of what he wanted to do with his life. And then what he expects from himself from the goals.
Yeah, so so he has a clear view of what he expects for his life, he has a clear idea of what his goals are. And the other thing is, he didn't tell you a job, he didn't give you a description, he told you something you can fulfill. So what you've done is you've been very clear about how you want this whole operation to feel, but you still have an infinite number of choices to be able to do it, right? There's a lot of ideas that you could use to make an impact on somebody, to be joyful, and to make your mom proud of you and your family proud. Right? And my sense is that anyone that you picked would fill that for them, which is an awesome place to come. Who'd like to go next? Alejandro, I have to tell you that I thought that somebody leading off would make it easier for the next person, but given your level of vulnerability, you actually made it harder. Ironically. Who's next? Yeah, I had you. Go ahead.
So,
Please speak up too.
my life, I've kind of just tried to be happy and like satisfied with what I currently have, because I know that I'm fortunate to be in the school, fairly wealthy family compared to the rest of the world. So just kind of don't take anything for granted. It's kind of most of my life. It all kind of started when I first learned about like 9/11. My dad was working at the Pentagon. As you know, that got hit, and he actually went to Belgium that week with my mom to go to like a wedding in my mom's family. And so if he had stayed at work, he probably would have been hit by the plane. So, you know, it's he might not be alive. I probably wouldn't be alive because I wasn't born yet. So just to know that I gotta take what I have for granted. I mean, not take it for granted. Just kind of be happy with the position that I'm in. Just know that there are a lot of people less fortunate than me. So, you know, just going forward, I want to live a life that I'm happy with. That I don't need to be the richest person or have all the stuff in the world. Just be satisfied with the position that I'm in.
And so when you have that position, when you have that satisfactory position that you're in, what will be giving your life meaning?
I think just being in that position, it's just getting, I guess, just being happy with where I am, knowing that I'm striving to be like a good person, like Alejandro said, to be a positive impact on society. Sure.
Well, that's exactly what I do. Right? You haven't told me, hey, I'm going to be an accountant and I'm going to do this and this, and I'm going to be like, you basically set up a framework that's emotion and values based where you get. So what I'm asking you is, you know, how are you going to know that you're doing a good job, or you're fulfilling that? You just told me, right? I would say that by listening to this, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what's coming through very clearly is a sense of gratitude, right? I mean, that is in what you have, and for the reasons that you have it, and what you're aspiring to, it's a life and a recognition of gratitude. What kind of questions do you have? Other than Juan, who'd like to go next? I'm going to get you. No, who would like to share their view? Ethan, please speak up from that.
Sure. After, can I use the bathroom?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. So I mean, I guess my life view, like, I have what is it, 3 other siblings, and it's just, I guess for all of my life I've been having to live with, you know, the idea of it's been a thing in my family where my parents treat my siblings like differently than me, and it's it's kind of like an individual thing. I wouldn't call it favoritism, but I guess for me, it was just like, since I have two younger sisters and an older brother who's a sophomore in college, you know, it just seems like for my sisters, you know, they treat them a lot, I feel like softer than me and my brother, and which is understandable, but for my brother, you know, they're more kind of like they know what he's doing, and he's older, so kind of move on with his life on his own. And for me, at least, it's just like they're hard on me. You know, they don't really know what I'm kind of set out to do, so I kind of just have to take my own path, and you know, I really know what I want to do in life, but it's something that I just kind of have to be confident with on my own. And I really want to make them proud, but living with like 3 other siblings just makes it a little bit hard. So that's kind of like my motivation in a sense. And, you know, I want to kind of show them that I'm not like a disappointment. And I feel like that's for a lot of people who live like these big families, but it just, for me at least, I think for like, especially this summer, like when Royal announced that they were going to go fully online, my parents weren't really sure that like going online and doing online classes was like the best option for me. They didn't feel like spending that much, like their money on that was like, you know, the best decision. And you know, I told them like I want to learn, you know, new things, and I want to kind of expand like I guess kind of field that I want to go into, and it's something that I just had to be confident that I want to show them that their money, like going to this new I guess start for me is worth it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I just want to kind of show them that I'm not like a little bit of this.
Okay, so I'm gonna let the group start out. What kind of feedback do you have for Ethan? Questions? Yeah,
I would say that he should be confident in himself. He is here, and will be like in February. So just try to keep your mind straight. And I think he already knows how, like, even though there's pressures, and I do identify with the pressures of having a big family, you do have to look out for what's best and like what's for your best interest first. And I do believe like since like experiencing this now is going to help him be a better person in the future, and like a parent in the future also. So it's good. I mean, it's I do identify with him, but it's good that it's happening now.
Okay. What else? What other questions did you have? Feedback you have for me? Somebody on this side. Isabella, what would you suggest? What's your takeaway from Ethan's story?
Well, I don't have a big family, but I definitely feel like my brother and I were not in competition, but like we get compared a lot. So I think like now being on my own, I can kind of like relate to Ethan and like still trying to, you know, make my family proud and stuff like that. But at the same time, like I said, being alone, it's taught me to like not worry about them so much and just like focus on myself.
Okay. So a distinction between what's important to you and what might be important to your parents or your people.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ethan, I have a question for you. Let's say that this all works out. And I do want to say too, you're off to a swimming start. You've got a ton of AP credits, you're able to get credit for it, you're ahead of your major, all the things that, all the metrics in terms of the success. And I have no idea what goes on socially, you just seem to have, you know, when I see you outside of class, your friends can get along with it, right? So from your advisor's standpoint, it looks like you're doing great. Okay. What I'm going to ask you is, let's play this out a number of years. And what will be meaningful to you if this all works out? And what will be meaningful to your parents if this all works out? And what are the differences? And if you would like that to be a rhetorical question for right now, give it more thought, that's fine. But all I'm doing is digging in deeper to what Isabella said, right? She talked about distinguishing, now that she's on her own, talking about and thinking more about what's important for her, because it's just her, right? Logistically, not literally, right? Yeah. As opposed to what might be important to her parents. I'm going to ask you the same question, because one of my takeaways was how much what you're talking about has to do with your relationship with your parents and their expectations, and you wanting to fulfill those expectations, right? And again, I think a couple people have talked and everybody relates to that. Me too, right? My question for you is one of the questions here. What will be meaningful, right? Like I asked earlier, how will you know that this is going well? What will be meaningful to you within this framework? And is it the same thing? Right? And I'll go back to the book, right? And the examples that we have, and that they talk about in the book, the guy who was the civil engineer, I forget his name, but the guy who was the civil engineer, right? And he was doing this life that everybody thought would be great for him. And it turns out it was kind of great for him, but for the wrong reasons. I don't want to say the wrong reasons, let's say for different reasons. Let me just ask you to think about that. Right? This is, again, you are the expert, you are the budding expert in your work view and your life view. Right? Let's make it about that. But also know that you're doing great. Well, thank you for that connection. Let's try this. Let me turn this down. Alex, try to say something.
Well,
Oh. Would somebody online like to share with us, please? Nick, Alex, Sydney, Aaron? Who'd like to share their view? Take a deep breath because you're gonna have to speak pretty loud.
I can go, but I don't have like as deep of a story as everyone else does. But I said that like my life view, something that gives my life meaning is just like being happy like with myself and the things that I accomplish. And you know, the value in my life, it comes from like how accomplished I feel in getting things done. But like not necessarily, it's not the activity that defines my life, it's more the product of how I feel after it's done that gives it its definition. But the story that I thought of as soon as I thought of like a life view was in the 7th grade, I was in Sacred Heart School. It was this Catholic school. I had like 20 classmates, and we had this math project where we had to make our own equation, and it had to add up to each day on a calendar. And we were just learning what PEMDAS was, and I did the entire project for like a week straight, and I completely forgot what parentheses were and that you had to include them. So I went to school and I submitted it, and I got it back with a huge 0 on it, and I got an actual 0 on our final project. And it just like, it hit me. I was like devastated because I was so proud of the calendar I made, even though I made it completely wrong. So I feel like in that moment, I realized that it's not really how things turn out that should affect you. It's more like the process of doing it and how accomplished you feel with your own work, even if it's wrong.
What kind of questions do you have for Nick? Somebody online can jump in and ask a question too. Sydney or Aaron or Alex. Let me cue it up a little bit here. additional details would you like about the story that he told from Sacred Heart in 7th grade?
I like that he was devoted to the project at the end of his
He
life.
was all in. He was all in. What's your teacher's name?
My teacher's name was Matthew Dalzell.
So it wasn't Sister Mary something.
No.
Okay, so Matthew, all right. So you kind of left us hanging. Were you able to resubmit the project, or did you just eat the 0?
So yeah, so Matt Dalzell, my math teacher, he went to school with my sister before he taught me. So we were like kind of close, teacher-student relationship. So I went with him after school and we did the project over, like me and him one-on-one for like a week. And then he gave me a 70, which was like the lowest score you could get if you resubmitted it. So it all turned out well.
Do you use parentheses like at your job now?
I did, and I will forever remember that they are a thing.
What's important to Nick? What's he value? Addie, what's important to Nick? What does he value?
The time spent doing things to do better than just the outcome.
Okay, so she said the time spent doing the things you do, not just the outcome. The whole time that you were telling that story, it sounded like there was a distinction that you were making between the satisfaction of finishing something and the joy of the process, right? You hear it with athletes or musicians or artists, and it's like the practice that you put in versus the final outcome. Which is it that you love or both, right? And I would ask you to continue to consider that. What else does Nick value? How does Nick value?
It's full effort, regardless of the result.
Yeah, you were proud of your effort. So he said, putting in your full effort, not so you were proud of that effort. You went through a lot of effort to screw that up, right? You worked hard. There's a lot of detail that went into that, because I imagine that the assignment was probably harder not using parentheses. Okay. Right, there's some prime numbers in the first month of the calendar, like there's some challenges, right? Okay. Who else wants to share? Hadi, please speak up.
So for me, it was more my parents were telling me that nothing comes easy in life, and that you have to work for whatever you want, that nothing will be handed to you. So my dad used to just tell me the story, kind of like how, because they both grew up in Pakistan. So when my dad was 18, he went to New Zealand to try to pursue a career in cricket, and then he that didn't go well, and he ended up being stuck there, had to work 3 jobs, and then he would have to send money back to his parents in Pakistan while he was 18 and 19. And so that was like a big struggle for him to get to work hard. And eventually he made his way to the United States and was in Chicago. And he had to start school up there again while working 3 jobs. And he just told me that story and to make me understand that nothing's gonna be free or given to you. You have to work to where you want to be. It was kind of the same with my mom. She was 20, she went from London and then Chicago.
How are you going to know what will be satisfying for you? Let's say this all works out swimmingly and a number of years from now you're doing something that you like. What will bring meaning to that? What will be fulfilling for that?
For me, it would be hopefully if I get to a point in in the future where I have a job and I'm happy and I can just tell my parents thank you.
I'm going to ask you a little bit different question here. What does Hadi's father value? I would say so. Where does Hottie's father's value of hard work come from? Over here. Where's it come from? Which one? This is-
When you went to New Zealand, so like who's committed to helping you like that?
Yeah, I mean, New Zealand's not close to anything, right? So Pakistan and New Zealand is some distance, right? And so he was committed, right? And he did stick it out. And you know, not for nothing, you gotta be pretty good at cricket to suck in New Zealand, right? Because they play it. Right? So he's there, he's doing, and he's still working hard and he's still providing for his family. And so when I asked Hadi, this is a small thing, but when I asked him, what will be meaningful and fulfilling for you? And he talked about his job and providing for his family. Right? There is no ambiguity whatsoever as to where that comes from. Why? If your dad was here, I would ask him the same question. Say, where did that come from? What gave you the confidence to go to New Zealand? And you would probably say, well, I could run really fast and shoot really hard. That's how I was really good. Right? Then he goes to New Zealand to Chicago. Okay. What can I tell you? What feedback can I give you, any of you, to make sure that you're going to be happy with and be able to write your papers for Saturday? What questions do you have about the assignment? You know where it is, right? You guys have been into the assignments on Google. You can go in and see if there's a description in the comments, and then if you dig in even further, there's even the rubric that I'm going to use this weekend to grade, right? So you're clear as to what's there. Okay, good. Because sometimes students come back and they didn't see that, so that's how I'm going to go through it, right? And so it's pretty consistent with the workshop that you've done, the questions that I'm asking you right now, and quite honestly, what they say in the book, right? Except for the story part. What I find interesting is that in every review, the most robust piece of what they have done is in the stories. So that's great. I want to make sure that, and this is why I asked this question in the beginning of class, I want to make sure that you understand what the work view and life view are, right? Because that's the first part of the paper, right? That's been the workshop and the worksheets and the things that you were brainstorming and that you were doing, is that you're clear as to what that is so that you can provide a definition of what your work and life views are. Because once you provide that definition, you know that I'm going to ask you compare and contrast. That's the comparison, right? Where you're kind of comparing your work and your life view. And you can't compare something if you don't have two things that are set up or detailed to compare. So when you are telling me about the coherency between your work view and your life view, and you say, oh, they're similar, the first question I'm going to ask you is, what about them are similar? They're both based on hard work and help. Okay, that's pretty coherent. Or, and I'm just going to make some up that I've seen over the last couple of years. I really want to make money. It's really important to me. My family didn't have money. It's really important to me. But I also really care about doing good in the world, and I don't know that those go together. That would be one of the two, right? Or the example in the book is, hey, I'm really big on the environment, but I work for Texaco, and we're drilling oil. And that's not great for the environment, right? That's incoherent. Okay. So if you write something down, go back to the slide where I have the cartoon people and the pronouns I, we, then the two smiley faces with the details, and A, E, I, O, and U. There's a pronoun in there or a broad descriptive, like values. Say which one. And think about the difference that makes. Think about the difference between Alejandro's initial discussion with us and what he talked about when he was talking about some people and others and many. But when he started to talk about himself, think about how rich and vivid that story became. When he's talking about hanging out with his brother in the living room and his mom calling him aside, putting his arm around him, and telling him how much she loved him, how proud she was, what a difference he was going to make, the success he was going to have. And he reciprocated, he told her all the same things. There was a big hug at the end. That's the difference. Because it's not just for the paper that you're going to write. So you're going to have a long time grading these, reading them. But you have to be able to define your attention, what your values are, if you know somebody will do it for you. You have to know if you're going to, we'll go right back to Ethan, lead off. What I'm reaching for, what I'm striving for, what my goals are. If you aren't clear about that, nobody else is. This is where that comes from. Sorry about this. Okay, so thank you for everybody who shared. Thank you for everybody who provided feedback on that. I want to point out again, every single person I called up had something to offer. Isabella, I had not finished my question and you had something that was ready to go. Right? You obviously had been thinking about that and working that question because literally I was not finished asking and you jumped right in. Yeah, Alejandro.
Like it's an emergency.
Yes. It's funny, I was going to say, I haven't had a student ask me to leave class to go to the bathroom. Maybe since I taught at Maryland, and I stopped teaching in Maryland in 2009. Right, so yeah, you can just go, you can just do that. It's not like a pass or something. Just go ahead, I'll just figure that's what you're doing, especially if you leave your stuff. Okay, I wanted to take a little bit of time. We're about a quarter of the way, a third of the way through the class. And I know this is kind of a strange class compared to some of your other ones. I know that we talked about the syllabus in the beginning. I post the behavioral objectives, but I want to be very clear about what it is that we've accomplished and what we've been doing, right? So your takeaways so far in this course is we've gone through the definitions of innovation and entrepreneurship, right? Those two areas where you have courage both to profess the idea and then to take the leap and the risk to be able to bring it to create a venture or a business, right? The values of the refined concepts of peer feedback that all hands can hear.
Yeah, it's just AirPods Pro.
Oh, yeah.
Everything else. So we've talked about peer feedback. That's good. Awesome. We talked about the characteristics and power of a servant leader. right, within this service-centered classroom of confidence. I'm gonna trust you that there are some takeaways on the definitions and terms commonly used by the Baltimore Racial Justice Action Group. We talked about brainstorming, the values of brainstorming, how you brainstorm, how you use time as a constraint, and then building headlines for those themes, which we will continue to do. We've talked about the value of failure and reframing those failures so that they are productive failures and created hopefully an environment where there will become less and less fear to worry about failure. Talked about the definition and consequences of gravity problems, right? Problems where there is no solution, like gravity, how it's important to not get stuck in those, right? The goals and the purpose of the dashboard that you filled out and the 4 life components and how those, you have to understand where you are so that you can move forward. And lastly, we're going through talking about the work view and life view and how they apply to design. That's what we said. Those are behavioral objectives for the course that we are moving towards. My sense in this class, especially with the first year students that have been used to getting material, taking a test, getting material, taking a test, is there's kind of this waiting for like, what's the really hard thing going to be? But this is what this course is about. Like you're getting college credit to figure this stuff out. That's really what's happening. And the only ask that I have is that 1, we create an environment where we can have these discussions, and 2, that if in that environment you describe the need for everybody to contribute and, as Nick added, to build upon those ideas, that we do that. Right? If you do it, that's it. So you've got for next week, the work and the life view are due, 2 separate documents. Or maybe it could be 1 document, one after another, but they are 2 distinct deals. Please continue with your good time journals. It's been a couple days. My sense is, maybe you haven't checked in and done those. It's going to be really apparent really quickly next week why you need those, right? Because I'm going to be specifically asking. We're going to lead off with feedback on Tuesday. I'm going to be asking you, what are some things that you've done that have showed you engagement, energy, flow, right? You want to be able to use AEIOU, use detail, and be able to describe those things, because those are going to go into the mind maps that we start next week, right? And that goes into designing your life, chapter 4. Also, some very quick, it's like 4 pages in the field guide. We're going to be talking about getting visual and being real, which means there'll be some drawing and prototyping involved. Ethan, are you right or left-handed? Patty, are you right or left-handed? Mostly lefty? Okay. There'll be drawing involved. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll get back to you. Better today. Keep getting better. We're comfortable. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend. Be safe. Weekends are crazy. Who else is with you? Who else is with you? Juan. Very good. It's not an issue for me, but if you do that, now very seldom will you all be in the same class, but you're totally busting all the rules that everybody else wants to. Okay. Right? I mean, like I said, I'm sure that everybody's safe doing it, but just, and also I don't want you to get sick.
Yeah.
But because like an RA or something, like your RA, like someone to see that.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I help you with Dr. Love?
So, well, your problem is one day that we work together, we have to finish this on.
Yeah.
And it takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we understand that.
And then where is it? Not all.
Well, it's actually on.
Yeah, no, I have a thought.
That's so weird. You're feeling like this is where I'm a happy place. They give an example of the book of one of the professors doing the rising of the streets, right? So you're doing these things. You feel like, the game is talk about engagement. And then the other one. I have another one. You do hybrid classes like this?
Thank you.
Who does it better than me and what happens? I'm not sure how.
I don't have. They're really like.
Yeah. Physics,